Swamp Thing, episode 2. When last we met, Alec Holland had just got blasted in the chest twice by a shotgun. He fell into the water, into the swamp water, and the forest, the swamp, the green, if you will, started to consume him. The vines and the trees started putting themselves like into his body and into his brain, which which is perceived as when he comes out of the water, it transformed Alec Holland into the thing that resides in the swamp. So now, so now, like at this point, the cops show up because Abby saw him, and then she started screaming or whatever. Maddie, the cop from the her old dude from back from high school, he shows up. He's talking to her, he's trying to talk her down, and she was just like, I saw something in the swamp, and he was just like, look, like, he's like, I'm a cop, we get reports about things in the swamp all the time. He's like, for all we know, you could have saw like a boar, like you could have saw like a wolf, like could have been a bear for all we know. Which then brings the sheriff into the fold, because this episode is very character heavy. We got introduced to a lot of people, and it's going to be interesting to see like where each individual person goes, because each character was brought up for a reason. They weren't just like one-off like BS characters. You can tell like when these characters were brought in, like they all served a purpose. So the first character that got introduced was the sheriff of the police department. She knows Abby Arcane because it's a small town. Everybody knows each other. She told Abby, she was like, oh, you let your hair grow. Abby kind of just like brushed her off. So apparently there's beef there. And then she was just like, I saw something in the forest. And then, she was just like, look, honey, she's like, I've been in the swamp for 30 years and I done seen it all. So she was just like, why don't you take your ass home, Mrs. Arcane? And, then Abby ended up, like leaving. And then the cops were just like, all right, we're going to look around and see if we can find something. So now Alec himself, again, he's the Swamp Thing now. So he's trying to figure out what the hell happened to him. He comes out of the water. He's looking at himself. He sees, he's looking at his, his skin and everything. He sees like he's covered in seaweed. So he tries to like pull the seaweed like off his body. He tries to pull all the stuff off, and it's not coming off. He then takes a chunk of seaweed that's on his head and tries to like pull it off of his face. And then when he pulled it off of his face, you would think that when he pulls the seaweed off of his face, he would eventually get to like his flesh and his bone and his skull. No, your man pulled a gigantic chunk of seaweed off his head, and it left a gigantic hole in his head, and all you saw when you looked into that hole was more seaweed. So now he's really freaking out. And not only was he freaking out, but the girl from the first episode, Susie, the one who was in the hospital whose father died, she woke up because she felt Alec's pain, like she felt what he was going through. When Alec was trying to pull the seaweed off and it wasn't working, Susie was just like, oh my God, like she was like, like she's like, it's almost like they're connected somehow. And it's weird because the way it's set up is that Susie is connected to not only Swamp Thing but to the to the swamp. And it's never it hasn't been explained yet where that connection comes from, because like, what did Susie do to have this connection? It's like, who injected her with something? Like, what chemicals, what radioactive swamp thing, swamp spider bit her, because and they said that there are more patients, like there are other patients who were affected by this disease, but so far Susie's the only person who has some sort of connection. Even the doctor, the Asian doctor, he came to her, and then he was just like, because she was freaking out, he was just like, hey, what's going on? And then Susie was just like, he doesn't know what's happening to him, he doesn't know what he's confused and he's scared, he doesn't know what's going on. And then the doctor was like, what the hell are you talking about? And so then but then, and then Alex again, like Alec was upset because he was trying to pull the swamp stuff off of him, and he couldn't do it. So he's freaking out, and now the girl freaking out. Abby ends up, staying at her black best friend's house, because in all of these shows, like especially the CW shows, but shows that are produced by like Greg Berlanti, and like there are always two things that you're always gonna have. You're always gonna have a black character. Like, you always have like one random black character, and someone is gonna be of the LGBTQ community. In this case, Abby's best friend Liz, she qualifies for both. she's both the black best friend character, and she's also a lesbian. But the way that they did it was very cool. they didn't make this whole big thing about her. Like she doesn't have a story that was like, Abby when I was 13, there's no it's like it's not a big deal. It's like, she's a lesbian, who cares? So, cuz Abby spent the night at her house. The two of them were just talking about the whole like Alex situation. Abby woke up the next morning. Actually, when Abby woke up the next morning, she woke up and she woke because again, she's staying at Liz's house. She woke up and when she went to stop the alarm clock, like this hand grabbed her out of nowhere on some enchantress like Suicide Squad shit, and I kind of jumped for a second. I was like, "Where did this person come from?" And then Abby saw like this creature, that she got scared, and it looked like her old best friend Shauna, who had passed away. But then when she blinked and then she looked again and then she didn't see anything. So Abby kind of writ the whole thing off as her just having a bad dream. So she goes into the kitchen, she's making coffee, she bumps into Liz's girlfriend because that was the thing. Like again, it wasn't like this whole big sign like, hey, guess what? I'm the token black character and the token gay character. It's just like she woke up, she met Liz's girlfriend. She was like, hi, I'm Liz's girlfriend. They had a nice little conversation. End of story. The girlfriend left and we moved on. Beautifully done. I appreciate that. So then after that, so that they're talking more, and Liz basically told her, she was just like, like I heard some stuff on the news, and the cops are like all over Alex, all over his research. Like they've locked down his shop to the point where you can't get into his lab to see any of his research. But Abby knew that Avery Sunderland, aka the rich white man, he was the one who owned the lab, so he's the one that locked the lab down. So Abby decided, she was just like, hey, I'm gonna go talk to him. And then Liz was like, you shouldn't do that because again, Shauna was his daughter, as well. And then she was just like, like you already saw what happened with the wife when the wife ran up on you at the bar, like at the restaurant. So she was just like, I wouldn't do that if I were you. But she was just like, no, I can talk to him. But Liz was just like, look, like he's a master manipulator, and just don't let him like get in your head. So Abby dips. She goes and talks to Mr. Sunderland. The two of them have a conversation. She tells him like, listen, like I'm from the CDC. Like I work for the CDC now, and I just need to get into Alex, like lab so I can look at his research so we can cure these people from being sick. And then Avery was like, no. He's like, we ain't doing that. He's like, I'm not gonna let you in because all the stuff that's owned by me that's in that lab is privileged information, and you don't have that privilege. And then Abby was like, yo, I can get a court order. And he was like, well, do what you got to do, princess. And then she was just like, yeah, because if I get a court order, then you're gonna clean the lab and sweep everything. He was just like, yep, but why don't you come back for dinner? You hear? And then she gets, the two of them are at a standstill. She gets mad and then she leaves. But before she left, she told him, she was just like, even when I was growing up, she said, you always had this thing about making a no seem like a favor. And I thought that because like he likes to sweet talk people and manipulate people, so he can tell you no, but because he's so good at the manipulation, although he's telling you no, he makes you feel better. Like he makes you feel good about the fact that he turned you down at the same time. So and there's a story in there too, because he said to Abby at one point, he said that when my wife and I took you in at 8 years old. So Abby actually lived with them since she was a kid, since she was 8 years old. Her and Shauna pretty much grew up as like sisters. They weren't just best friends. Like she lived with the Sunderland family, which means there's a whole backstory for Abby that has yet to be spoken of. Where's Abby's actual parents? Why did she live with the Sunderlands? Like what's that whole situation? So hopefully we'll get to find out what's going on with Abby's backstory, because they dropped a lot of stuff and then just walked away and just walked away from it. So Abby's just like, all right, some bullshit. But then Liz told her that Alec was actually staying at a place. Like he wasn't sleeping in the lab. So the two of them go down to the place where he was staying. So this enters a new character. The gentleman that owns the place, it was basically a video store. Like the guy owned a video store, but he was renting out rooms for like travelers and other people. He rented one of those rooms to Alec. So they go and talk to the guy who owns this video store. The guy that owns the video store is an actor. He's a professional actor, and he did a movie called The Blue Devil. And the Blue Devil is a DC comic character. I don't know too much about the Blue. I'm aware of the Blue Devil. I don't know too much about the Blue Devil. I've only seen him a few times in like in certain like DC animated movies, and then also in Young Justice. But he never actually said anything. So I don't really know a lot about his backstory. So I got to learn more about the Blue Devil as this whole thing progresses. So. But this actor that owns this video store, he played the Blue Devil in a movie. So already they foreshadowed the F out of that because obviously this guy is the Blue Devil. So, but he doesn't look like he has magical powers or anything. So we'll see. So he ends up he meets like Liz and them. They talk. They he was just like, hey, listen, Alec had a laptop. He used to use my laptop to do some of his research. Gives Abby the laptop. She goes upstairs, starts looking at his videos, and then she gets the call from from the Asian dude at actually I think the Asian guy, like, he's gay too. I think they established in the first episode that he was gay as well. But anyway, so we got two. So we got two. So the two minorities like on the show are the only LGBTQ people. Even with the swamp, I'm like, we're in the swamp. Like, where are the black people? Like, there's like three black people in this whole entire town. Like, we're like, like there should be more. Like, there should be more like brown people. Like in the, anyway. Uh, so then, so then after that, so they, so he was just like, yeah, Susie's missing. The girl done jumped out the window, and she ran off. She ended up like Susie ended up jumping in someone's boat, and that boat was taking her to, what was it, Piner Cove or something Cove. It's basically the place in the swamp where Swamp Thing lives. Skeeter Cove, that was the name of it. So she's on her way to Skeeter Cove. So Abby, like, she's freaking out, and then she's like, yo, we gotta go save her. So then, like, they branched off for a second. We went to Mrs. Sunderland. Mrs. Sunderland, she basically went to go see she went to go see the second black character on the show, which is an old black blind woman who, I guess she's like a witch doctor. She does voodoo. She can tap into the spirits, but she's blind apparently. But she does have the mystical powers. So Mrs. Sunderland goes to her because she's just like, listen, I can feel my daughter's presence. Like, I can almost hear her. I feel my daughter calling out to me. So she wants her to do her voodoo magic to try, like one of those tarot card people that's like, oh, I can talk to the spirits. Apparently that's what this woman can do. So she hooks up Mrs. Sunderland for a seance, so they so she can reach out to her daughter. So she's just like, focus your mind on your daughter, focus on Shauna's energy. And then so Miss Sunderland got her eyes closed. She's the black woman, she's doing her incantation, and then she touches Mrs. Sunderland's hand. And when she touches her hand, she saw Shauna next to Mrs. Sunderland, and Shauna grabbed her hand, and then she got scared and jumped back. Like, she fell over, and she's like, oh my goodness, like, what's going on? And then and then Mrs. Sunderland, like, what's going on? And then, like, some powerful force like threw Mrs. Sunderland across the room, and then the glass started breaking and everything. And I'm like, what the hell? This kind of exorcism shit is going? So then Mrs. Sunderland was just like, what's happening? And then she was just like, there's forces out there that are alive. Like, the swamp is alive. And then she was just like, please, Mrs. Sunderland, let it go. Let your daughter rest. And then she was just like, I can't, like Mrs. Sunderland, like she's so broken up over the loss of her child. Like, she's not letting this go. She will not let this go. This woman flat out told her, like, there are evil spirits among us. She was like, something going on with the swamp, and then she was just like, let it go. And then Mr. Sunderland was like, nah. So that's going to be a thing. That's definitely going to be a thing going forward. Now we're at the Sunderland house, and a new couple shows up. A white doctor, and I believe his wife was Latina. The two of them, they're both doctors. I guess they went to the university together. They studied together. I didn't buy their their romantic relationship, but you never know. People fall in love for crazy reasons. So they show up at the Sunderland house. They go speak to Mr. Sunderland. Mr. Sunderland basically was just like, bro, you fucked up, because apparently, like, this doctor, the male doctor, he was the one responsible for whatever toxic chemical, because Mr. Sunderland basically dumped he came up with like some pathogen or whatever, some chemical or something, and he had this guy come up with this chemical, and the guy dumped the chemical in the swamp. I'm not sure what the plan was. I don't know if he was trying to rejuvenate the swamp. I don't know if he was trying to kill the swamp. I don't know if he was trying to create something, or it was like whatever. But this guy, this doctor, he's responsible for this disease now that's terrorizing the town. And when Sunderland told him, your experiment is making people sick, and he was just like, that can't be. He was like, the pathogen wasn't supposed to do that. He's like, well, buddy, it's doing that. And then he was just like, listen, he was like, the CDC is here and they're trying to investigate and they're trying to take it down. He was just like, listen, if he's like, I don't care if they try to save people, but in the midst of them trying to save lives, if they discover that I'm the one that, that started this whole disease to begin with, he was like, I'm going down and I'm taking you and your wife with me. So so my advice to you is, he's like, I'm gonna set y'all up with a house somewhere and you're gonna figure out how to cure this shit before it goes public. So, so the doctors now, it's their job now. Well, I guess it's the husband's job because the wife, she didn't really have too much to do with that. But it's his job now to try to cure this disease before Abby finds out that Mr. Sunderland is the one that's behind it, which is why he didn't want her going into Alec's lab looking at his research, because he doesn't want anybody to find out that he's the one that's involved. So he's trying to keep his shady practices under wraps. So we're still looking for the girl. Abby's getting a boat together. She called the police. She called Matt, the police officer. The sheriff is there. And the sheriff was like, well, of course she called you, Maddie. And then he was just like, why, Ma? And I'm like, Ma. So the sheriff of the police department and Matt, like, that's his mom. So like there, and then she was just like, yo, you had a thing for that girl since high school. You've been nursing that flame, forever. She's just like, don't let Abby Arcane get you caught up in some stuff you can't come out of, boy. So I'm just like, all right, that's cool. I'm like, apparently the mom, like, apparently, like, the mom, she likes her coffee black because, if you look at the son, he looks mixed. Like, he looks like he's half white, half black. So I'm just like, all right, so, maybe so it's like, obviously his daddy black, and maybe we'll see his dad, pop up in later, like later on, because they never spoke of his dad, just his mom. So I was like, that's pretty cool. So, so him and Abby, they're going to investigate. He basically told Abby he had a crush on her in high school, knew that was coming. And then they're trying to like find Susie, because they're just like, they said that there was a report that somebody saw a girl jumping in a boat, so they were just like, she's on her way to Skeeter Cove. So so now in Skeeter Cove there was another police officer who was there. He saw a boat with two guys in it. The cop goes up to the boat. He's just like, hey, what are you guys doing? It was a black dude and this tall white guy with long hair. The white guy ended up taking a harpoon and stabbing it into the cop's neck and his throat and damn near killed the police officer. Well, actually, he did kill the police officer, and the black guy immediately started freaking out. Like, once you kill a cop, the black dude was like, ah, shit. They're like, what we's gonna do now? And then the white dude was just like, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. And then while he was trying to get rid of the body, Susie basically jumped out the boat and she ran. And then the white guy ended up going after Susie, because he was just like, we can't have no witnesses, because Avery Sunderland basically paid those two guys to cover up any evidence, that could lead back to him. So they were basically there doing cleanup. And then the cop showed up, and then like he saw something, so he had to die. And then the girl, Susie saw something, so now this white dude with the long hair, he's going after Susie. Matt, I forgot what happened to the black guy. I don't know if the white guy killed the black dude or if the black dude was just like, yo, I ain't down with this and I'm out. I actually forgot what happened to the black dude. But anyway, so Abby shows up, Matt shows up, they see the dead police officer. Matt's like, yo, I'm gonna go investigate. He goes and has a look around. The white guy chased Susie all the way to this house, this house in the middle of nowhere. And then Susie's like hiding in the water. The guy finds her. He sticks his harpoon into the floor. Susie starts screaming. Abby hears Susie's voice. She's like, oh my God, Susie. So she goes after She goes to see if Susie's okay. The guy ends up finding Susie. He's about to kill Susie. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, here comes Swamp Thing. And when he showed up, I was just like, bro, like, the episode's almost over and we just now, like, I mean, they showed him in the beginning, like, for 3 minutes in the beginning of the episode trying to rip the seaweed off his face. And then after that, we pretty much didn't see him again until he went to go save Susie. And I'm just like, bro, like, how you only get like 10 minutes of screen time on your own TV show? So, but apparently, like, him and Susie have some connection. Like, they have a rapport. Like, Susie can feel what he feels, she can see what he sees, and the connection works both ways because Swamp Thing knew that Susie was in trouble. So he goes after. He ends up killing the white dude. He protects Susie. He saves Susie. Abby shows up. She sees Susie, and then Swamp Thing stands up, and then when Abby saw Swamp Thing, like Abby was like running towards Susie, and when she saw Swamp Thing, she put on the brakes. She was like, "Hold up!" She sees Swamp Thing, and then she's just like, she was like, "Susie, come over here," and then she's like, "But Abby," she's like, "Now, girl, get your." And I'm like, "First of all, you ain't her mama," and then but Alec didn't do anything. He was just standing there. He was just looking at Abby, and then Abby was the one who was scared and freaking out. And then Susie came over. Abby grabbed Susie. She jumped in the boat and they dipped. So while they were so they get in the boat, they dip, and then Alec is just standing there like, yeah, I can't catch a break. And then it took us to like this other scene where we check in on Mrs. Sunderland, and she's in her daughter's room, her daughter's old room, and she's sleeping in her daughter's bed. And when the camera panned out, not only was she in the bed, but the zombie corpse of her daughter was in the bed with her as well. So Mrs. Sunderland, apparently she can see her daughter's ghost. like she can see like her daughter's like ghost spirit or whatever. So there's a lot going on with this woman. I don't know if it's just delusion, obsession, or the swamp gas is starting to get to her. She's starting to see shit. But so we got a bunch of people now. So we got the doctor couple who's supposed to rid the town of the disease that they created. We got the sheriff, who's Matt's mom. We got the Blue Devil, the actor that owns the record store. And then I feel like I forget. Oh, then well, no, well, Liz's situation that don't really count for nothing. So I said, so there's some new characters that are in the mix, like some new people that are in the mix that will add more to the dynamic of the show, because there's a lot going on, there's a lot going on in Moray. That's what they call it. And then in the final scene, while Matt's taking Abby and Susie, like back to the mainland, Abby ends up asking Susie. She was just like, when you were with that creature, she was like, did it hurt you? And she was like, no. She's like, he's confused, because like she said earlier, she was like, he's confused. He doesn't know what's happening to him. And she's like, I was trying to help him. And then she was like, hold up, like he spoke to you? And then she was just like, yeah, we had a whole conversation and everything. And then Abby was just like, well, what did he say? She's like, what else did he say? Can you remember anything else that he said? And then she was like, yeah, he said his name was Alec. And then Abby was like, "Oh shit!" And then that's how the episode ended. So good episode. This episode was about everyone except Swamp Thing, and it was done. I thought it was done very well, because they do a good. Because the thing about it is like what's going on with all like these new characters that got introduced. What's going on with Abby and a lot of the other characters. You're invested in it to the point where, when Swamp Thing actually shows up, you're like, oh yeah, like this is your show. So good character development, for everybody. So we now have to see where everything goes. Like, what's the purpose now? Like, what part is everybody gonna play? And what's the connection now? Because now that Abby knows that that's Alec, is she gonna go talk to him, or is she just gonna act like nothing ever happened? So that was it. Episode 2 of Swamp Thing in the books. I heard that the episode 1 ratings did pretty good. It did very well. So, as the show does better, hopefully the ratings will continue to be good. Hopefully the ratings will continue to go higher. And the studio, HBO Max, DC Universe, Warner Brothers, whoever, they'll greenlight the season 2, and then we can hashtag save Swamp Thing. So leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the show so far. Let me know what you think about the dynamic of the show so far. Get a conversation going. Hit the notification button so you'll get notified when episodes 3 through 10 come out for Swamp Thing, as well as other content that I got going on. And again, definitely, leave a like and, ask me a question, because I always respond to the questions I get asked on YouTube. So until next time, agreed, Swamp Thing, take care, and I'm out, peace.